The first champagne glass shattered 3 feet from my knee. A second later, Major General Thomas Rourke hit the white carpet hard enough to rattle every crystal flute on the head table. For one strange moment, nobody moved. 200 guests stood beneath the steel ribs of the converted aircraft hangar, dressed in black ties, silk gowns, and polished metals. The orchestra stopped halfway through a note. A photographer lowered his camera. Somewhere behind me, a woman whispered that the general was having a heart attack. Then everyone moved at once. Chairs scraped backward. Someone screamed for a doctor. A man in a tuxedo dropped beside General Rourke and planted both hands over the center of his chest. I caught his wrist before he could push down. "Don't." He looked at me as if the woman holding a serving tray 10 seconds earlier had no right to touch him. "He needs compressions," he snapped. "He has a pulse." General Rourke's skin had turned gray around the mouth. His chest barely moved. One hand clawed uselessly at his collar while his throat made a thin, high sound that barely qualified as breathing. "He isn't losing his heart," I said. "He's losing his airway." I set 2 fingers against the side of his neck and watched the second hand on the gold clock above the stage. His pulse was fast, too fast. I looked over my shoulder. "Call emergency services. Tell them severe anaphylaxis with airway compromise. Find his epinephrine, now." No one moved. They were all waiting for someone who looked more official. Someone with a white coat. Someone with a badge. Someone who had not spent the previous 10 minutes carrying champagne for people who refused to learn her name. My sister-in-law Paige stood frozen near the stage, one hand pressed against the headset she used to control the event. My husband, Owen, was beside her. He stared at me with the same expression he used whenever I said something at dinner that might make his mother uncomfortable. His mother found her voice first. Celeste Whitmore pushed through the circle of guests, the gold pin from her dead son's uniform shining against her black dress. "Get away from him," she said. I did not look up. "Paige, call emergency services." "You are not a doctor," Celeste said. "No, you are not part of the medical team." "No, you were pouring wine." General Rourke's breath caught. His body jerked once. The room heard it. So did I. I reached for the small evening bag that had fallen beside my knee and pulled out the trauma shears I had carried for more than a decade. The handles were scorched dark along one side. 5 melted grooves marked the plastic near the hinge. I slid the lower blade beneath the general's collar. Celeste grabbed my shoulder. "Mara, stop." I cut through his bow tie. The fabric snapped apart. Colonel Isaac Bell stood on the other side of the circle. Until that moment, he had been only another retired officer in a decorated jacket, another respected guest Celeste had invited to make the foundation look legitimate. Then he saw the shears. His bourbon glass slipped from his hand. It struck the floor and broke. Bell stared at the faded letters scratched into the blackened handle. "DUSTOFF 2-6. His face lost its color. "Medevac," he whispered. That single word changed the air in the room. But before I tell you why a retired colonel went pale at the sight of those burned shears, stay with me, because the truth they had buried for 10 years was about to surface in front of everyone. 10 minutes earlier, Celeste Whitmore had placed a silver tray in my hands and told me I was not part of the family on stage. What none of them understood was that humiliation had never been the most dangerous thing in that hangar. The dangerous thing was a family that had spent 6 years teaching me silence was the price of being allowed to stay. My name is Mara Keene Whitmore. I was 39 years old that night, although Celeste had a way of making me feel 17 whenever she looked at my clothes. I had served 14 years in the United States Army, most of them as a flight medic aboard evacuation helicopters out of Fort Campbell, Kentucky. When I left, I was a sergeant first class. My husband's family described that career differently. According to them, I had helped with medical things on helicopters. They said it the way someone might describe a summer volunteer job. They did not know how many times I had worked with blood inside my gloves. They did not know what burning hydraulic fluid smelled like when it mixed with desert dust. They did not know how a rotor sounded when one blade had been damaged and the whole aircraft was deciding whether to stay in the sky. I had tried to explain once, only once. It happened during my first Christmas with the Whitmores. Celeste had asked where I met her younger son, Jacob. I began telling her about our crew, the evacuation missions, and the night his helicopter went down. She stopped me before I reached the second sentence. "I know how my son died," she said. The table went silent. Then she smiled and asked Paige about a new restaurant. After that, I learned the family rule. They did not want the truth. They wanted a version that could be framed. Jacob Whitmore was Owen's younger brother and Celeste's favorite son. He had been a crew chief in my unit. He was funny when he was tired, reckless when someone else was in danger, and incapable of walking past a broken machine without touching it. He called me keepsake. I had a habit of collecting things other people abandoned. A bent challenge coin, a torn unit patch, a child's red plastic bracelet from a village clinic. Jacob said I carried the dead weight of the whole world in my pockets. I told him someone had to remember where things belonged. He laughed. Then, during our final mission together, I left something behind that no pocket could hold. By the time Owen and I arrived at the Whitmore Veterans Foundation Gala, rain was drumming against the roof of the converted hangar. The event space had once housed military transport aircraft. Celeste had transformed it into something that looked less like a place built for machines and more like a palace designed by people who had only seen war in photographs. White fabric covered the steel support columns. Crystal lights hung from cables where engine hoists had once been. A vintage helicopter sat behind the stage beneath blue spotlights, polished so perfectly that its surface reflected the tables arranged around it. The aircraft had never flown in combat. That made it ideal for the Whitmore Foundation. Beautiful, clean, untouched by anything real, Owen handed the valet our keys and adjusted his tie in the glass doors. "You look tense," he said. "I'm listening. To what?" "Exits, generator, rain on the east side of the roof." He smiled without humor. "We're at a fundraiser, Mara." "Not Afghanistan, I know where we are, then try to be here." He said it gently, smoothing one cuff as if softness could change the shape of the words. Owen always said painful things that way, then he watched my face until I made them easier for him to live with. Inside, Paige was already moving between the tables with a headset over one ear and 2 phones in her hand. Her gold dress caught the light every time she turned. She had built the Foundation's public image around words like sacrifice, legacy, honor, and healing. Paige had never served. She had, however, hired 3 photographers to document people who had. When she saw us, she looked at Owen first. "Mom needs you backstage." Then she looked at me. Her eyes moved from my dark blue dress to my shoes and stopped at the small scar above my ankle. "You wore flats. Yes, this is a formal event." "They are black. They look practical. They are." Paige exhaled. "Of course they are." Owen touched my lower back. It might have looked affectionate to anyone watching. I knew it was a warning. "Please," he murmured. That word had become the foundation of our marriage. "Please let it go. Please do not correct her. Please understand tonight matters. Please be the stronger person." The stronger person, I had learned, was usually the one everyone expected to bleed quietly. Celeste waited near the stage beside a wall printed with Jacob's photograph. He was 28 in the picture. His uniform was clean. His smile was crooked. The photographer had captured him before our final deployment, before the right side of his helicopter burned, before Celeste turned his death into the central story of her life. She wore his gold crew wing pin on her dress. Whenever Celeste felt control slipping, she touched it. That night, her fingers were already resting against the metal. "You are late," she said. "We are 4 minutes early," I replied. Her eyes sharpened. Owen stepped between us, traffic near the bridge. Celeste looked past him at my dress. "Where are your decorations?" "I'm not in uniform. Veterans are wearing their medals." "I don't wear mine on evening clothes." She glanced toward the photographers. "It would have helped people understand why you are here." "I'm here because I'm married to your son." Celeste's fingers tightened around Jacob's pin. Her smile held. One corner of her mouth stopped moving. Then Paige hurried toward us. "We have a problem," she said. "One of the servers collapsed in the kitchen. The agency can't send a replacement for at least an hour." Celeste looked at the room, then she looked at me. "No," Owen said quietly. For 1 second I thought he was defending me. Then he added, "People will notice." Celeste's gaze stayed fixed on my practical black shoes. "Not if she stays off the stage." Paige understood immediately. She disappeared and returned carrying a silver tray lined with champagne glasses. The tray was heavier than it looked. She held it toward me. I did not take it. "Mom," Celeste smiled. The smile arrived before the request. It never reached her eyes. "Mara, tonight is about Jacob, so I've been told. It is also the most important night Faujin Mumstead has had in 10 years. General Rourke is expected to announce a major gift. The press is here, the board is here, every detail matters." "What does that have to do with me?" One of our servers is unavailable. Paige pushed the tray closer. You have 2 hands. Several guests turned toward us. Celeste waited until the nearest photographer raised his camera. Then she let Paige push the silver tray into the light between us. Owen looked at the floor. I waited for him to say my name. He did not. Celeste lowered her voice, but not enough. Tonight you are not part of the family on stage. You are the person helping that family look perfect. My breathing slowed until each inhale felt measured. I had heard men scream while trapped inside armored vehicles. I had heard mothers beg over satellite phones. I had heard a pilot calmly announce that we were losing altitude while smoke filled the cabin behind him. Celeste's voice was quieter than all of those sounds. My left hand closed until my nails marked my palm. I looked at Owen. His thumb and forefinger had closed around his wedding ring. He turned it once, then again. Just until dinner, he said. Then we'll sit together. There was a seating chart on a stand behind him. I saw my name printed beside his at the family table. A strip of white paper had been placed over it, service access. The words were typed in black capital letters. Someone had prepared them before the server became ill. This was not an emergency solution, it was a decision waiting for an excuse. Paige shook the tray once. The glasses chimed against one another. I looked at the strip of paper covering my name, then at Owen's hand still resting on his ring. I took the tray. The weight settled into my palm with the familiarity of something carried too long. Paige smiled. Try not to spill anything. I moved through the crowd. People took glasses without looking at me. Some thanked me. Most did not. I knew 3 of the guests from veterans' medical conferences. None recognized me in the dim light with my hair down and a silver tray balanced on one hand. That did not bother me. Recognition was not the same as respect. I had learned that long before I met the Whitmores. A man near the auction display studied my face. Were you in the service? Before I could answer, Celeste appeared beside him. Mara supported medical operations, she said. Jacob was the one who flew into active combat. The man nodded as if that settled the difference between us. That must have been difficult, he told me. It was. Celeste's hand touched Jacob's pin. Jacob saved 9 men during his final mission. The number was wrong. He had helped save 7 before the crash. Noah Rourke was the 8th. I had been the 9th person who came out alive. Celeste never counted me. A server passed carrying a bucket of ice. The cube struck the metal sides in a hard, uneven rhythm. For a moment the hangar disappeared. I was back inside DUSTOFF 2-6. The rotor was slowing. Not normally. One blade had taken damage and every turn shook the cabin hard enough to throw equipment against the walls. Red light filled the interior. Someone was shouting coordinates. Someone else was praying. Jacob was on his knees at the side door. It's jammed, he yelled. He drove one boot into the frame. The door moved 2 inches. Smoke poured through the opening. On the floor behind me, a young captain had blood running from beneath his helmet. His left leg was twisted under a collapsed seat bracket. He kept calling one word, Dad. Jacob kicked the door again. Come on, he shouted at the aircraft, as if the machine might obey him out of embarrassment. The door opened another foot. Fire burned outside. The memory stopped there. It always stopped where I wanted it to. I returned to the gala with my fingers locked around the tray. A woman reached for a glass and frowned. Are you all right? Yes, you look pale. The lighting. Across the room, Owen was laughing beside 2 board members. He looked relaxed. He looked like a man whose future was unfolding exactly as planned. His promotion had not been announced, but everyone knew. If the Rourke donation came through, the board would make Owen executive director of the foundation. The position paid more than his law firm salary and carried the kind of public respect his family valued. For months he had spoken about the appointment as if it were already his. He said it would give us a better life. He never asked whether I wanted a life financed by an organization that had erased me from its most important story. I reached the kitchen corridor and placed the tray on a service table. My hand was shaking, only slightly, enough to make the glasses touch. Paige appeared behind me. Mom says you're avoiding the guests. I'm taking a breath. Do it while walking. I turned. What name is General Rourke supposed to hear? Her expression changed. What? I heard you on the headset. You were listening to a private production channel? You were standing 6 feet away. Paige folded her arms. You always do this. Do what? Turn everything into an interrogation. I asked one question. You enter a room and scan everyone like they're a threat. You sit with your back to walls, you count doors, you notice every whisper. It makes people uncomfortable. People usually become uncomfortable when they are hiding something. Her jaw tightened, then Celeste's voice came through Paige's headset. Keep her away from the Rourke party. Paige pressed one hand over the earpiece too late. The words had carried through the small speaker. I watched her face. She watched mine. Why? It isn't about you, then it should be easy to answer. Paige stepped closer. General Rourke came to honor Jacob. I know, his son was on Jacob's final flight. The corridor seemed to narrow. What did you say? You heard me. What is his son's name? She looked toward the ballroom. Her silence gave me the answer before she spoke. Noah. The young captain inside the burning helicopter had been Captain Noah Rourke. I had known his first name. I had known his blood type, his injuries, his evacuation priority, and the names of the medications I gave him. I had never known his father was Thomas Rourke, the general whose photograph appeared on defense panels. The man whose donation could save the Whitmore Foundation. The man Celeste had invited to celebrate the story she had carefully edited. Does he know I'm here? I asked. No, does Noah? I don't know. That means yes. Paige glanced down the corridor. Mara, do not make this difficult. I haven't done anything. That is exactly what Mom is afraid of. For a moment, only the headset hissed between us. Paige looked away first. Just stay in the service areas until after the announcement. You already changed my seat. It was a logistics issue. You printed a service badge before your server became sick. Her mouth opened. Nothing came out. Footsteps approached. Owen entered the corridor. Paige looked relieved. Handle her. He waited until Paige left, then he closed the kitchen door behind him. What happened? They knew Noah Rourke would be here. Owen's shoulders lowered, not in surprise, in defeat. You knew, Mara. You knew. Mom told me yesterday. And you said nothing. She was afraid you would react. To seeing a man I pulled out of a burning aircraft. To everything around it. The room smelled of coffee, citrus cleaner, and hot metal from the kitchen. I could feel the old taste of copper rising beneath my tongue. What exactly did you think I would do? I don't know. Yes, you do. He twisted his ring. She thinks you blame Jacob. I have never blamed Jacob. She thinks you blame her. I barely speak to her. That is the problem. Your silence feels like judgment. My silence is the only gift your family has ever accepted from me. His face tightened. This night is about my brother. No, it is about the version of your brother that makes your mother powerful. He stepped back as if I had struck him. You don't get to say that. I was there and he died. The words came out fast. Too fast for him to stop. I watched regret cross his face. Then he made it worse. You lived, he said. My mother lost her son. Whatever else happened, she paid more than you did. The copper taste flooded my mouth. My fingers went numb against the edge of the service table. A stack of white saucers blurred, then sharpened again. He had made survival sound like a debt. Jacob's death had become the bill. My silence was the payment. Owen watched me without blinking. His hand hung beside his body. The ring had stopped moving. I looked at it, then at him. He did not take the words back. My fingers slipped from the table before he could see them shake. I need to get back, he said, to the board, to the event. Of course. He touched my arm. I moved before his fingers reached me. Mara, please, just get through tonight. A breath escaped me that might have been a laugh. Owen flinched. He still watched me as if my refusal to behave were the only danger in the room. He opened the door. The orchestra had begun playing again. Guests were moving toward their tables. Owen turned back. After the announcement, we'll leave together. I looked at him for a long time. Then I picked up the tray. He mistook that for agreement. General Rourke arrived 3 minutes later. The entire room changed when he entered. People stood straighter. Conversation softened. Paige hurried toward the entrance with both phones raised. Celeste arranged herself beneath Jacob's photograph. Rourke walked with Colonel Bell on one side and a younger man on the other. Noah, he used a cane. His left leg moved stiffly, but his shoulders were broad and his gaze was alert. A pale scar ran from his jaw beneath his collar. I recognized him before memory could argue. Not the face. The way he watched doors. People who have been trapped inside burning aircraft do not enter rooms casually. They measure distance. They notice what could block the exit. Noah looked across the crowd. His eyes passed over me. Then returned. I lowered my face before certainty reached him. Paige appeared at my elbow. Service corridor, she whispered. He saw me. He saw a server. No, her grip closed around my arm. I looked at her hand. She released me. "Please," she said. It was the first time she had used the word without sounding like Owen. I moved behind a column. From there I watched Celeste greet General Rourke. She touched Jacob's pin while speaking. Rourke listened with the expression of a man who had survived too many briefings to confuse confidence with truth. Noah looked beyond her, searching. Colonel Bell stood near the stage. He seemed older than I remembered, but his posture had not changed. He still held his left shoulder slightly lower, the result of an old flight injury. He had been waiting at the field hospital when DUSTOFF TWO-SIX arrived without half its crew. He had cut my uniform from my body. He had ordered 2 medics to hold me down when I tried to go back to the flight line. I wondered whether he remembered. I prayed he did not. Dinner began. I carried wine. At the head table, General Rourke declined the shrimp appetizer. "No shellfish," Noah told the server. The server nodded and replaced the plate. I noticed the serving utensil. The same tongs had touched the shrimp and the vegetable tart placed in front of the general. I set down my tray. Those tongs were cross-contaminated. The server stared at me. "What? He has a shellfish allergy." "I don't know. Noah just said no shellfish." Paige stepped between us. The general's staff approved the menu. The utensils were shared. "The kitchen is handling it. They need to replace the plate." Paige smiled at a passing photographer. "Stop, Paige. Go to the west tables." I looked at General Rourke. He had not eaten the tart yet. A donor leaned over to speak with him. He smiled politely. Then he took a bite. I felt the muscles in my back tighten. I walked toward the on-site medical station near the rear entrance. 2 emergency technicians had been contracted for the event, but only one was present. The other had gone outside to meet an arriving guest. "General Rourke may have been exposed to shellfish," I said. The technician looked toward the stage. "Does he have a documented allergy?" "I don't know. Are you family? No medical staff?" "Not for the event." He looked at the tray in my hand. "I'll keep an eye on him." That phrase had buried people before. Keep an eye on him. Wait and see. Probably fine. I returned to the head table. Rourke was touching his throat. His water glass trembled slightly when he lifted it. The skin above his collar had turned red. I stepped beside Noah. "Does your father carry epinephrine?" He looked up sharply. "Why does he?" "Yes, where inside left pocket." "What's wrong?" Rourke coughed. Celeste was speaking into the microphone, introducing a video about Jacob. The screens behind her filled with images of him in uniform. Noah turned toward his father. "Dad?" Rourke raised one finger, signaling he was fine. Men like him often believed the body obeyed rank. His voice was rough when he answered. "Swallowed wrong." I heard the change in his airway. "Soft, early, dangerous. Use the injector now," I said. Noah reached toward his father's jacket. Rourke stopped him. "I'm fine, you're not." Celeste's amplified voice carried across the room. Jacob Whitmore believed service meant stepping forward when others stepped back. The video showed a photograph of Jacob beside DUSTOFF TWO-SIX. I stood at the edge of the frame. Paige had cropped most of me out. Rourke tried to draw a deeper breath. His chest did not rise fully. Noah reached for the jacket again. Rourke pushed his hand away. Then the general stood for the donation announcement. The room applauded. He took one step toward the podium. His glass fell. He followed it down. For half a second, the memory of another aircraft tried to take me. Red light, smoke, Jacob kicking the door, Noah calling for his father. Then training moved faster than memory. I put down the tray. The rest happened exactly as the cold part of my mind had already calculated. 3 steps to the table, 1 chair in the way, 2 guests frozen near the aisle. The man in the tuxedo dropping to his knees, his hands moving toward the general's chest. My hand catching his wrist. "Don't, he needs compressions." "He has a pulse." General Rourke's airway was closing. Noah was beside me now. "The injector," I said. He reached into the inside pocket and pulled out an epinephrine auto-injector. His hands shook. "Give it to me." Celeste pushed through the circle. "Get away from him." I removed the safety cap. "Outer thigh," I told Noah. Through the clothing, he stared at the device. "Do it." His hand would not move. I took it from him and drove it against the general's thigh. A sharp click. I held it in place and counted, not quickly. Not slowly. The room around me dissolved into movements and sound. Someone calling emergency services, someone crying. The orchestra leader ordering musicians away, Paige telling photographers to stop filming. Celeste repeating my name as if it were an accusation. General Rourke's pulse hammered beneath my fingers. His airway remained tight. "Where is the medical team?" I asked. A voice answered from behind the crowd, coming, not good enough. Bring oxygen, bring the airway bag, move. The tone made people obey. It always had. Celeste grabbed my shoulder. Mara, stop. I cut through the general's tie and collar. The shears made a hard metal sound against the fabric. Colonel Bell saw them. His glass broke. Medevac, he whispered. I did not look at him. General Rourke's eyes were open but unfocused. I leaned closer. General, listen to me. Your son is here. Stay with his voice. Noah dropped beside his father. I'm here, Dad. Keep talking. What do I say? Anything he can follow. Noah placed one hand against his father's chest. You still owe me a fishing trip, he said. You said spring. It's almost summer. General Rourke tried to answer. Only air came out. The on-site technician arrived carrying oxygen and a medical bag. What happened? Likely anaphylaxis. Epinephrine given less than 1 minute ago. Pulse present. Severe airway compromise. He stared at me. Then at the serving badge pinned to my dress. Colonel Bell stepped forward. Do what she says. The technician opened the bag. I fitted oxygen over Rourke's face while the technician prepared additional equipment. Bell knelt across from me. His eyes moved from the shears to my face. There was recognition there now, not complete, but growing. Where did you get those? He asked later, his gaze sharpened. What unit, Colonel? The rank came out before I could stop it. Not, sir. Not Dr. Colonel. Bell went still. I had used that same tone once in a field hospital while blood ran into my eyes and he asked me where the rest of my crew was. He remembered the voice. I saw the exact second it happened. His mouth opened. No sound came. General Rourke's breathing worsened. Focus, I said. Bell nodded. The epinephrine began to work, but not enough. The technician checked the general's blood pressure. Dropping second dose may be needed when protocol allows, I said. Emergency services need to know airway is deteriorating. They're 6 minutes out. 6 minutes. Inside DUSTOFF TWO-SIX, 6 minutes had been longer than a lifetime. The damaged rotor turned above us. Smoke pushed through the open door. Jacob cut the first restraint with my trauma shears and dragged a wounded soldier toward the opening. Take him, he shouted. I pulled the man across the floor and shoved him into the arms of someone outside. The aircraft shifted. A seat frame collapsed across Noah's left leg. He screamed. Jacob crawled back in. Fuel lines gone, the pilot yelled. We have to clear. We clear everyone, Jacob shouted. He braced both hands against the metal frame trapping Noah. It did not move. I cut through the harness across Noah's chest. He grabbed my wrist. My father, he said. You're going to tell him yourself. Jacob laughed once. Always promising things. Lift on 3, I told him. We lifted. The frame moved half an inch. Outside, ammunition began cooking in the heat. Sharp cracks tore through the air. Jacob looked toward the rear of the aircraft. Fire had reached the cabin wall. Again, I said, Mara. Again, Mara, listen to me. We lift. You take him. I'm not leaving you. You take him now. His face had changed. Crew chiefs know aircraft. Jacob knew exactly how much time remained. He shoved my shears into his vest. I'll cut the last strap. Give them back. You collect everything, Jacob. Take him. The memory broke as the paramedics entered the gala. They carried a monitor, airway equipment, and more oxygen. The lead paramedic was a woman with gray hair pulled tightly beneath her cap. I gave the handoff. 71-year-old male, known shellfish allergy per family. Suspected cross-contact. Rapid onset throat tightness, rash, respiratory distress. Hypotension. First epinephrine auto-injector administered approximately 4 minutes ago. Pulse maintained throughout, oxygen applied, airway worsening but still moving air. She listened without interrupting. Then she looked at the general. Good handoff, stay at his head, Celeste heard her. So did everyone else. No one told me to move. The paramedic administered additional treatment. Rourke's breathing began to improve by degrees, not dramatically. Real recoveries rarely happen dramatically. The high sound softened. His color changed from gray to a pale, exhausted pink. Noah pressed his forehead against his father's hand. Bell remained across from me. He had not stopped staring. Mara Keene, he said. The room was quiet enough for the name to travel. I kept my eyes on the general. Bell's voice grew firmer. Sergeant First Class Mara Keene. Owen stood near the head table. His face emptied. Paige removed her headset. Celeste's hand closed around Jacob's pin until the metal edge cut her palm. Bell looked at the people surrounding us. I received DUSTOFF TWO-SIX at the field hospital. Noah turned. The paramedic raised one hand. Give us room. Bell stepped back. Every face in the circle turned from him to me. The paramedics transferred General Rourke onto a stretcher. Before they moved him, his eyes found mine. He lifted 2 fingers weakly from the blanket. Not a salute, an acknowledgement, that was enough. Noah followed the stretcher toward the exit, then stopped. He turned back. For a moment, he looked like the young captain on the floor of the helicopter. Blood beneath his helmet, one leg trapped, calling for his father. "I've been looking for you for 10 years, he said. The doors closed behind him, nobody applauded. My shoulders lowered when no one lifted a hand. Science stayed intact. I remained kneeling on the carpet. Rourke's blood from a small cut near his mouth marked the side of my hand. Champagne soaked the hem of my dress, the severed black tie lay beside my knee. The silver tray had fallen near the stage, glasses rolled slowly across it. Paige looked at them, then at me. Her gaze moved from the overturned tray to my soaked dress, then toward the doors where the stretcher had disappeared. The serving tray, the ruined dress, the woman her family had hidden in the service corridor. The general leaving alive, photographers had ignored her order. Cameras were still raised throughout the room. Celeste stepped forward. Her palm was bleeding around Jacob's pin. "Knowing first aid does not make someone a hero," she said. Her voice shook, but she forced it louder. Her eyes moved past me to the cameras. Then to the board, her bleeding hand tightened around Jacob's pin. Bell looked at her. "No," he said, "going back into a burning aircraft does." The silence afterward felt physical. Owen closed his eyes. Paige whispered, "Mom." Celeste turned toward Bell. "I don't know what you think you heard. I heard the name of the medic who arrived with Captain Rourke. Jacob's crew rescued him." Bell nodded. "Yes." Relief flashed across Celeste's face too quickly. Then Bell continued, "And Sergeant Keene carried him out." Celeste's relief vanished. "That is not how the report reads." "Which report?" "The Foundation has the citation." Bell's expression became colder. "The Foundation has the public summary." He looked at me. The medical report was different. I stood slowly. My knees felt older than the rest of me. Owen took one step forward. "Mara," I raised my hand. He stopped. My palm stayed between us. For the first time in our marriage, I did not step aside to make his next decision easier. Celeste looked around the room. "This is neither the time nor the place." A voice answered from behind her. "You made it the place." Noah had returned. The ambulance had not yet departed. He stood inside the open doorway, rain visible behind him. "My father is stable enough for transport," he said. "He told me to come back." Celeste softened her expression. "Noah, you should be with him. I spent 10 years being with him while your foundation told my story without me." Paige stared at the floor. Noah walked toward the stage, his cane striking the concrete beneath the carpet. One step, then another. He stopped in front of Jacob's photograph. "I owe Jacob Whitmore my life," he said. "That has never been in question." Celeste touched the pin again. Noah looked at me, but Jacob was not alone. The room seemed to lean toward him. He faced the guests. Our helicopter was taking fire before it went down. Jacob forced the side door open. He moved 2 casualties himself. When the cabin shifted, my leg became trapped beneath a seat frame. His hand tightened around the cane. "Sergeant Keene cut me out." Celeste shook her head. "Jacob cut the restraints." "He cut the final strap," Noah said with her shears. My eyes dropped to the blackened handles in my hand. Noah continued. "The fuel had already ignited. Jacob ordered her to take me first." A guest near the front began crying. Noah's voice did not change. She refused. The aircraft tilted. Fire crawled across the cabin ceiling. Jacob shoved the shears into his vest. "I'll cut the last strap," he told me. "I'm coming back." I know, it was the way he said it. Not reassurance, permission. I pulled Noah beneath the arms. He screamed when his leg cleared the twisted frame. Outside, someone shouted that the fuel was going. I dragged him toward the open door. Halfway there, he lost consciousness. Jacob was behind me. I could hear him cutting, metal striking metal, one blade against a restraint buckle. I reached the opening. Hands caught Noah from outside. I turned back. Jacob was still inside. His leg had become trapped where the floor buckled beneath the crew seat. He saw me understand. "No," I said. He raised one hand. "Not goodbye, stop." The pilot was still moving near the cockpit. Jacob pointed toward him. "Get help." I climbed back into the doorway. Heat struck my face. Someone outside grabbed the back of my vest. I kicked free. Jacob shouted my name. The fuel tank ignited. The blast threw me across the ground. For years, that was where my memory ended. Not because I could not remember more, because what came next was worse. I crawled back. The helicopter was burning through the center. 2 soldiers held me by the shoulders. I fought them. I bit one hard enough to draw blood. I screamed that Jacob was alive. I screamed until Colonel Bell injected something into my arm at the field hospital. When I woke, my trauma shears were gone. Jacob was dead. So was the pilot. I had lived. That fact became the verdict I carried into every room afterward. Noah looked at Celeste. Mara went back. Celeste's face had become rigid. She could not reach him. No, Noah said, but she tried until they restrained her. He turned toward the guests. Every version of this story the Whitmore Foundation has told says Jacob saved 9 people. He looked at me. The 9th person was Mara. The words moved through the room like wind. Not loud, impossible to stop. Celeste's eyes filled, but her chin remained high. I lost my son. Yes, Noah said. There was no cruelty in his voice. That does not mean she did not lose him too. Owen sat down in the nearest chair. He covered his face with one hand. For one dangerous second, the old part of me wanted to go to him. To kneel beside him, to tell him his brother had been brave. To make his grief easier. Then I remembered the kitchen corridor. You lived. My mother lost her son. I stayed where I was. Colonel Bell walked to the head table. A thick blue folder rested beside General Rourke's empty seat. Bell looked at Noah. Noah nodded. My father brought that for the announcement. Celeste moved quickly. That folder belongs to General Rourke. He told me to open it, Noah said. Paige stepped toward her mother. Mom, do not. Mom, let him. Celeste turned on her daughter. You knew what was in it? Paige's silence answered. Owen lowered his hand. What is in the folder? Noah opened it. The first page carried the seal of the Rourke Family Veterans Trust. The second held a photograph, DUSTOFF TWO-SIX, before the crash. Jacob stood beside the side door. I was next to him, wearing flight gear and holding a medical bag. The pilot leaned from the cockpit window. We were all squinting into the sun. Alive, ordinary, unaware of the way strangers would later arrange our story. Noah placed the photograph on the lectern. My father did not come only to donate to the Whitmore Foundation, he said. He came to announce a joint medical evacuation training program. Celeste stared at the folder. No, Noah read the name. The Jacob Whitmore and Mara Keene Medevac Initiative. Someone in the room inhaled sharply. The words reached me without sound. The floor shifted beneath my practical black shoes. My name had been placed beside Jacob's, not beneath it. Not in a footnote, not behind a strip of paper marked service access. Beside his, Celeste stepped toward Noah. That was not the agreed name. It was my father's condition. We discussed honoring Jacob. My father said he would not fund another monument that turned soldiers into mythology. Celeste looked at Paige. You saw this? Paige's eyes were wet. I saw the draft this morning, and you said nothing? You told me to remove Mara from the program. Owen stood. You knew too. Paige shook her head. Mom said Mara declined recognition. Every face turned toward me. I looked at Celeste. I never saw the program. She would have made it about herself, Celeste said. The lie sounded weak even to her. Bell opened the folder farther. There is a citation. Celeste's hand shot toward it. He moved the document beyond her reach. No, the word came from me. Bell paused. I had not planned to speak. I had planned to survive the night and go home. Plans are fragile things, what? He asked. I looked at the citation. Then at Jacob's photograph. If you read it, read his part too. Bell studied me, then he nodded. He moved to the microphone. The speakers carried his voice across the hangar. He read Jacob's actions first. How he forced the damaged door. How he moved casualties while the aircraft burned. How he remained aboard to free a trapped soldier. Celeste closed her eyes. Her shoulders folded. She covered her mouth and forgot the cameras. Bell continued. Then he reached my name. He described how I maintained treatment during the crash. How I returned to the aircraft after the first explosion. How I removed Noah while under fire. How I attempted to re-enter after the fuel ignited. How I continued directing casualty care despite burns, a concussion, and blood loss. The words sounded like they belonged to someone else. That is the strange thing about official courage. On paper, terror becomes sequence. Pain becomes conduct. The moment you believed you had failed becomes a paragraph explaining why others lived. Bell finished. Nobody moved. I was not on the stage. I was not beneath a spotlight. I stood near the service corridor with the general's blood drying on one hand and a serving badge pinned to my dress. That was where the truth found me, not in the place Celeste reserved for heroes. In the place she had assigned to help. Celeste opened her eyes. I was protecting my son's memory. I looked at Jacob's photograph. No, her face tightened. I met her gaze. You were protecting the only version of him that did not force you to look at me. The room stayed silent. I did not raise my voice. I did not list everything she had done. I did not mention the seating chart, the serving tray, or the years she introduced me as medical support. She remembered them without help. Celeste touched Jacob's pin. Blood from her palm marked the gold. He was my child. I know you came home. Yes, I had to live with that. So did I. The answer broke something in her expression. Not pride, not yet, but the certainty that her pain was the only pain in the room. Paige's headset crackled. A voice from the production booth came through the ballroom speakers. We are still live. Paige went white. The headset channel had been connected to the event sound system. Celeste's accusation, Belle's response, Noah's testimony, and the reading of the citation had all gone out through the live stream. Paige stared toward the cameras. More than 12,000 people had been watching the gala online. The number climbed as clips were shared. For years, Paige had built the family's reputation by controlling the frame. Now the frame had widened without her permission. Owen came toward me. His face was wet. Mara, I waited. I didn't know. You knew enough. I didn't know about the program. That is not what I meant. He looked down. His fingers found his ring. He started twisting it. Mom was afraid. I know. She lost Jacob. I know. She wasn't thinking clearly. For 10 years, he flinched. I should have told you Noah would be here. Yes, I should have stopped them from making you serve. Yes, I should have defended you. Yes. Each yes made his mouth open a little farther. He kept searching my face for the forgiveness that usually arrived before his explanations ended. He looked toward the board members. Several stood together near the stage, speaking in low voices. Then he looked back at me. Please tell them this was a misunderstanding. Owen's gaze slid past me to the board again. General Rourke had nearly died. My history had been dragged into the open, and Owen was still looking away from me. You haven't asked whether I'm all right, I said. His mouth opened. Nothing came out. I removed my wedding ring. I did not throw it. Anger likes theater. Grief does not need it. I placed the ring in his palm and closed his fingers around it. Mara, don't do this tonight. I'm not doing it tonight. He stared at me. I've been doing it for 6 years. Behind him, the Foundation's vice chair approached the microphone. She was a retired Navy captain named Elaine Morris. Celeste had often complained that Elaine cared more about governance than loyalty. That night, governance became the kindest thing in the room. The board will suspend tonight's administrative announcements, Elaine said. The proposed executive director appointment will not proceed. Owen's hand closed around the ring. Elaine continued. General Rourke's representatives have confirmed that the donation will remain committed to veteran housing and medical evacuation training, subject to independent oversight. Celeste looked up. The foundation is mine. No, Elaine said. It is a non-profit organization. Elaine did not raise her voice. The board will meet tomorrow. Until then, Celeste Whitmore will step aside from operational authority. Celeste swayed. Paige reached for her. She pushed her daughter's hand away. Elaine looked at me. Miss Keene, the board owes you an apology. I shook my head. The veterans using your housing programs do not owe me anything. No chair moved. Even the cameras stopped clicking. Do not punish them for what happened here, Elaine nodded. We won't. That mattered more than Celeste losing a title. Real revenge is easy to confuse with collateral damage. When you have been erased, part of you wants the whole building to burn so no one can deny there was a fire. But the veterans sleeping in Foundation apartments had not placed that tray in my hands. The families waiting for rent assistance had not changed my seat. Justice that crushes innocent people is only pain wearing a better uniform. Noah returned to the hospital. Belle offered to drive me. I declined. I needed air. Outside, the rain had softened to a mist. The ambulance was gone. Blue reflections from the wet pavement moved across the hangar walls. I stood beneath the awning with my evening bag in one hand. The trauma shears were inside. For years I had carried them without understanding why. I told myself they were useful. The truth was less practical. They were the last object I had touched inside the aircraft. The last thing Jacob had taken from my hand, the last piece of equipment that did not return with me. I had found them in a package 3 months after the crash. No return address, no note, only the shears wrapped in brown paper. I assumed someone from the unit had recovered them from the wreckage. I never asked. Some answers are frightening because they might make grief worse. Others are frightening because they might change the grief you have already learned to carry. A car stopped near the entrance. Paige stepped outside. She had removed the headset. Without it, she looked younger. "Your ride?" I asked. "No," she wrapped her arms around herself. "Mom is in the office with the board. I'm sure she has plenty to say." Paige almost smiled, then she looked toward the rain. "I changed the seating chart, I know, she told me to." "I know, I printed the service badge before the server got sick." "I know," her face folded. "I hated you." The honesty surprised me. "Why? Because you never needed anything from us." "That isn't true. You acted like it was. I thought of every dinner where I waited for Owen to speak. Every holiday where I let Celeste rewrite Jacob. Every time Paige made a joke and watched to see whether I would defend myself. I needed you to be decent," I said. She looked away. That was probably worse. We stood in silence. Inside the hangar, workers began clearing broken glass. Paige wiped her face. "The live stream clip is everywhere." "I assumed it would be. People are calling Mom a fraud." "Is that what you came to tell me?" "No," she took a breath. "I came to say the program file was changed yesterday. The original draft had your name. Mom told me General Rourke agreed to remove it." "He know. Did Owen know?" "Not about that. Only about Noah, only about the plan to hide me, only about the tray." Paige kept her eyes on the wet pavement. The list did not grow smaller. Paige looked at my bag. "Are those really the Shears from the crash?" "Yes, why were they burned?" She nodded. Then she walked back inside. Bell found me 20 minutes later. He had retrieved his coat and removed the medals from his jacket. Without them, he looked less like the authoritative witness who had silenced a ballroom and more like the tired flight surgeon I remembered. "I owe you an apology," he said. "You kept me from going back into the aircraft." "That isn't why. I waited. When you woke at the field hospital, you asked whether Jacob suffered." My throat tightened. "You said he died on impact." "I did. Was that true?" Bell looked toward the rain. "I don't know." My throat tightened. Then air reached the bottom of my lungs. Bell had given me certainty because he thought it kinder. Celeste had used certainty to protect her own grief. Bell continued, "I also told you the crew did everything possible." "We didn't." "You did. I left him. He ordered you to move a casualty." "I still left." Bell faced me. "Sergeant, there is no version of that night where everyone comes home." The old title landed softly. "You saved the person you could reach." "I chose Noah. Jacob chose Noah. You honored his decision." I looked through the glass doors at Jacob's photograph. "I don't know whether I believe that. You don't have to believe it tonight." That was the first kind thing anyone had said that did not demand immediate healing. Bell handed me a small card with his number. "Call when you are ready to hear the medical report." "I thought you said it was different from the public summary." "It is." "What does it say?" "That you had second-degree burns on both arms, a fractured wrist, and a concussion when you attempted to return to the wreck." I looked at my hands. The scars had faded, the memory had not. Bell touched 2 fingers to his forehead, not a formal salute. A farewell between people who understood why formality sometimes failed. Then he left. I spent the night at a hotel near the hospital. Owen called 19 times. I turned the phone face down. At 3 in the morning, Noah sent a message. "My father is stable. He wants you to know he remembers your voice." I read the sentence twice. Then I slept for 47 minutes without dreaming of fire. The next afternoon I went to the hospital. General Rourke was awake but exhausted. His throat was swollen and his voice had been reduced to a whisper. Noah sat beside the bed. When I entered, the general lifted one hand. "Sergeant Keene, General, you ruined a very expensive dinner." "So I've heard." His eyes moved toward Noah. "My son says you saved me twice." "I gave you epinephrine once. He says the first time was 10 years ago." "That was Jacob. That was both of you." He rested his hand against the blanket. "I should have found you sooner. You didn't know my married name." "I had people. That sounds ominous." A weak smile touched his face. "I was told you did not want contact." By whom? He did not need to answer. Celeste had guarded more than a public story. She had controlled the paths by which anyone from that night might reach me. Noah picked up a thick envelope from the chair. "This is why I asked you to come." The paper inside felt old. The first document was the complete mission report. The second was a copy of my citation. The third was a letter in Jacob's handwriting. My hand stopped. "He wrote it before the deployment," Noah said. "It was in a storage box with some of his personal effects. Your mother-in-law gave my father access when they started discussing the foundation program." Did she read it? I don't know. I unfolded the page. Jacob's handwriting leaned hard to the right, impatient even on paper. Keepsake, if you are reading this because I finally remembered to mail it, congratulations. If you are reading it because something happened, then I am going to be furious that the army let you anywhere near my belongings. I had to stop. Noah looked toward the window. I continued. My mother will make me into a saint if I die. Do not believe her. I complain I cheat at cards, and I am afraid every time the aircraft takes fire. That last part matters. People think courage means the fear goes away. It does not. Courage is knowing exactly what can happen and climbing aboard anyway, because someone out there is having the worst day of his life. You do that better than anyone I know. You always take the difficult part and pretend it happened by accident. If my mother turns me into a statue, remind her I was a man who knew fear. And remind her Mara Keene was the reason I kept getting back into the helicopter. I lowered the page, the ink blurred. I pressed the heel of my hand beneath one eye. No sound left me, the page stayed level between my fingers. Warmth moved slowly beneath my ribs, silent, loosening something that had stayed frozen for 10 years. Noah placed a small evidence bag on the table. Inside was a dark fragment of metal. Part of Jacob's dog tag. My fingers touched the plastic. There is something else, he said. He pointed toward my evening bag. The shears. I took them out. Jacob had them when the aircraft ignited, Noah said. He used them on my restraint. I knew that. He kept cutting after you moved me. My grip tightened. The final strap was still wrapped around the blade when the recovery team found them. I looked at the 5 melted grooves in the handle. For 10 years, I believed the burns meant the shears had lain uselessly inside the wreckage after I abandoned him. They meant the opposite. Jacob had been using them. He had still been fighting. The marks I counted whenever guilt became too loud were not proof of the moment I left. They were proof of what he did after. Noah reached into his pocket and placed a folded piece of brown paper beside the shears. This was the wrapping. I recognized it. The package that arrived 3 months after the crash. I sent them, he said. I was in rehabilitation. I did not know what to write. There was no note. I thought the shears were the note. I laughed once. The sound surprised all 3 of us. Noah smiled. I was 28 and heavily medicated. You were a captain. That did not make me intelligent. General Rourke closed his eyes. His hand remained near mine on the blanket. I built half my life around finding a way to repay what happened, he whispered. Your mother-in-law built hers around owning it. I looked at Jacob's letter. What did I build? Noah answered. A place where no one could ask you to remember. He was right. My small community clinic was quiet. Predictable, safe, no helicopters, no cameras, no one who knew the name DUSTOFF TWO-SIX. I had called it peace. Some of it was hiding. General Rourke opened his eyes. The initiative still needs an advisor. I am not interested in being the face of a foundation. Good, faces are expensive. Noah leaned back. My father means the training program. I know what he means. We want flight medics involved in its design. I have been out for years. You recognized anaphylaxis across a ballroom while carrying champagne. That is not the argument you think it is, Noah smiled. I looked at Jacob's letter again. Courage is knowing exactly what can happen and climbing aboard anyway. I will review the proposal, I said. General Rourke nodded. For a retired major general who had spent his life giving orders, he knew when not to push. I did not return to the Whitmore house. Owen packed a suitcase and brought it to the hotel. We spoke in the lobby. He looked as if he had not slept. Mom stepped down, he said. I heard. The board appointed Elaine as interim chair. That makes sense. My appointment is gone, I know. He watched me. Do you care? Yes. Hope moved across his face. I continued. I care that you wanted it badly enough to turn me into a servant at your brother's memorial. His hope disappeared. I didn't know they planned the tray. You watched. I froze. You chose. Mara, I loved you. Did I love you? Then why did loving me always require my silence? He looked down at the ring in his hand. I thought I was keeping peace. You were keeping access to what? Your mother's approval. The board, the family name, whatever you were afraid she would take. He sat on the edge of a lobby chair. I lost my brother. I know, I didn't know how to stand against her after that. I know, she made grief feel like loyalty. That sentence was the closest he came to the truth. I sat across from him. For a moment we were simply 2 people who had loved each other badly. Not villain and victim, not soldier and coward. 2 tired adults who had spent years building a marriage around a subject neither could survive discussing honestly. "I am sorry," he said. "I believe you. Is that enough?" No, his eyes filled. I did not reach for him. Believing an apology does not obligate you to return to the place where it became necessary. "We could try counseling. You asked me to lie to the board before you asked whether I was hurt." I panicked. That is who we become when the room catches fire, Owen. He looked at me. "People can change. Yes, then give me a chance." "You have one." "He changed," I said, "not to get me back. Not to save your position. Change because you finally understand what you became." And us, I don't know. It was not forgiveness. It was not punishment. It was the most honest answer I had. Celeste did not contact me for 3 weeks. Then a package arrived at the clinic. Inside was Jacob's crew wing pin. The same one she had worn at the gala. The dried blood had been cleaned from the gold. Beneath it lay a note. I believed that sharing his story meant sharing my pain. I was wrong. I made him smaller because I could not survive how large the truth was. There was no request for forgiveness, no explanation about the foundation. No promise that she had changed, only those words. I placed the pin beside Jacob's letter. I did not reply. Some boundaries are not revenge. They are the distance required for truth to remain true. The Whitmore Foundation kept its housing programs. General Rourke's donation moved into a restricted fund overseen by an independent board. Elaine added 3 veterans and 2 military spouses as voting members. Paige resigned as communications director. Months later, she took a job with a small hospital network. She sent me a photograph of a staff training session where no one stood in front of a branded backdrop. The caption read, "I am learning how to help without being seen helping." I saved the message. I did not answer immediately. Owen began counseling. We remained separated. He visited Jacob's grave without Celeste for the first time in 10 years. He told me afterward that he had apologized to his brother for using his death as an excuse to avoid becoming an adult. That was not enough to repair our marriage, but it was real. Real things deserve to be acknowledged even when they arrive too late. The training initiative opened the following spring. We did not build a statue, we built a simulation center. The main room contained the stripped interior of a medical evacuation helicopter. Flight medics trained there under noise, smoke, darkness, and time pressure. Above the entrance were 2 names, Jacob Whitmore, Mara Keene. The letters were the same size. On opening day, General Rourke asked me to speak. I refused. Noah laughed. "You saved a general in front of 200 people, but you are afraid of a microphone?" "Yes, that is disappointing." I stood at the back while the first group of medics entered the simulator. One young woman checked the medical bag 3 times before climbing inside. I recognized the ritual, fear made practical. I walked over and handed her my trauma shears. She looked at the burned handle. "Are these safe?" "The blades are. What happened to them?" "They were used." That was all she needed to know. She clipped them to her vest and climbed aboard. The simulator door closed. Rotor noise filled the room. For 1 second, my body prepared for impact. Then I looked through the observation window. No fire, no blood, only people learning how to bring someone home. I used to believe honor was something other people returned to you once they finally learned the whole truth. I was wrong. Honor is what remains inside you during the years when nobody is willing to look. It is the part of you that still moves toward a person in danger after the room has treated you as invisible. It is the decision not to burn innocent lives just because someone used your silence against you. It is the boundary you draw when love begins demanding that you disappear. My husband's family did not give my honor back at that gala. Colonel Bell did not give it back when he said my name. Noah did not give it back when he told the truth. The citation did not give it back when it placed my actions on paper. They only made it impossible for anyone to hide what had been there all along. For years I thought surviving DUSTOFF 2-6 was the part of my story I needed to justify. I know better now. Survival is not a debt, silence is not loyalty. And family is not defined by the people who place you beside them when cameras are watching. It is defined by the people who still recognize you when you are on your knees, covered in someone else's blood, doing the work they once called insignificant. If this story meant something to you, share it with someone who has been asked to disappear just to keep the peace. That night, Celeste placed a tray in my hands because she wanted me to understand my place. 10 minutes later, the tray was lying upside down beside the stage. The general was alive. The truth was standing in the center of the room. And for the first time in 6 years, I walked away without asking anyone's permission.